have been many natural disasters over time, ranging from small-scale ones to catastrophic disasters. They happen when you least expect it, when one second you may be playing in the ocean and all of a sudden the tide rolls out, or you think a small thunderstorm is brewing and you look outside and see a massive gray tornado plowing its way towards your house. Today we're going to uncover the top 5 catastrophic natural disasters in the history of the world today. Number 5. The 1920 Haiyuan earthquake in China. The 1920 Haiyuan earthquake in China was a seismic catastrophe that struck the Haiyuan country of Ningxia and parts of Gansu on December 16, 1920. With a magnitude estimated between 7.8 and 8.5, this earthquake left an indelible mark on the region, leading to widespread destruction and alarming loss of life. The aftermath of this disaster, both immediate and long-term, highlighted the vulnerability of the affected areas and triggered significant efforts for recovery and reconstruction. The Haiyuan earthquake is often cited as one of the deadliest earthquakes in recorded history. It is estimated that the quake claimed the lives of around 200,000 to 240,000 people. The high casualty count can be attributed to a combination of factors, including the densely populated nature of the affected regions, inadequate construction practices, and the immense power of the seismic event itself. The earthquake's epicenter was located in the Haiyuan County of the Ningxia Hui Autonomous Region. The tremors were felt across a vast area, affecting neighboring provinces such as Gansu. The event occurred in a seismically active zone where the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates interact, leading to intense geological activity. The immediate aftermath of the earthquake was characterized by widespread devastation. Entire villages were leveled, and many buildings constructed without proper seismic considerations crumbled under the force of the tremors. The destructive power of the earthquake extended to the disruption of infrastructure, including roads and communication networks, hampering rescue and relief efforts. The human toll of the Haiyuan earthquake was staggering. Tens of thousands of lives were lost in the initial amounts of the quake. As buildings collapsed and communities were engulfed in the chaos, the lack of modern emergency response systems at the time further compounded the challenges of rescuing survivors and providing medical assistance. In addition to the immediate impact on human lives, the earthquake triggered secondary disasters that added to the overall devastation. Landslides were a common occurrence in the mountainous terrain of the affected areas, burying communities under debris and exacerbating the challenges faced by the rescuers. Furthermore, the earthquake generated a series of aftershocks, prolonging the period of uncertainty and fear among the survivors. The Haiyuan earthquake was a wake-up call for China and the international community regarding the importance of the earthquake restraint construction practices and disaster preparedness. The scale of the disaster prompted a reassessment of building codes and construction standards and seismic zones. Lessons learned from this tragic event contributed to advancements in earthquake engineering and urban planning in subsequent years. In conclusion, the 1920 Haiyuan earthquake in China stands as a tragic chapter in the nation's history. The devastating earthquake and its aftermath highlighted the vulnerability of certain regions to seismic activity and prompted significant changes in earthquake-resistant construction practices and disaster preparedness. Number 4. The 1970 Bhola Cyclone in East Pakistan, which is now known as Bangladesh. The 1970 Bhola Cyclone, one of the deadliest tropical cyclones in recorded history, struck East Pakistan on November 13, 1970. This natural disaster left an indelible mark on the region, causing widespread devastation, loss of life, and triggering significant socio-political consequences. The aftermath of the Bhola cyclone showcased the vulnerability of coastal areas to extreme weather events and underscored the need for improved disaster preparedness and response. The Bhola cyclone originated in the Bay of Bengal, gaining strength as it moved northwestward towards the vulnerable coastline of East Pakistan. With the wind speeds reaching an estimate of 115 miles per hour, the cyclone made a landfall with devastating force, causing a storm surge that inundated coastal areas. The lack of the early warning systems and effective communication exacerbated the impact, catching communities off guard. The immediate aftermath of the cyclone was catastrophic. Entire villages were swept away, and vast areas were submerged under the storm surge. The powerful winds uprooted trees, demolished homes, disrupted essential infrastructure, leaving survivors stranded and isolated. The storm surge, reaching heights up to 34 feet, which is also 10 meters, inundated low-lying coastal areas, causing widespread flooding and compounding of the destruction. The human toll of the Bhola cyclone was staggering. It is estimated that between 300,000 and 500,000 people lost their lives in the disaster. The high casualty count can be attributed to the densely populated nature of the coastal region, inadequate infrastructure, and lack of preparedness for such a severe cyclone event. The cyclone's impact was particularly severe in the Bhola and Barisal districts, where entire communities were emancipated. The devastation overwhelmed local authorities and relief organizations, leaving the survivors without immediate assistance, medical care, or access to essential supplies. The aftermath of the Bhola cyclone highlighted the critical need for improved disaster response mechanisms to heighten preparedness in vulnerable coastal regions. Beyond the immediate humanitarian impact, the Bhola cyclone had a profound socio-political consequences. The inadequate response to the disaster fueled public discontent and criticism of ruling authorities. The discontent, coupled to existing grievances, contributed to the growing sentiment that ultimately played a role in the political landscape of East Pakistan and the subsequent events leading to Bangladesh's Liberation War in 1971. In the aftermath of the cyclone, international aid and support became crucial for the affected region. The disaster drew attention to the vulnerability of coastal areas in the Bay of Bengal to tropical cyclones and underscored the importance of global cooperation in addressing the aftermath of such devastating events. Number 3. The 1556 Shannxi earthquake in China. The 1556 Shannxi earthquake, also known as the Jijing earthquake, stands as one of the most catastrophic seismic events in recorded history. Striking the Shannxi province in China during the Ming Dynasty on January 23, 1556, this earthquake left an enduring mark on the region, causing unparalleled devastation and shaping the way subsequent generations approach earthquake preparedness and response. The Shannxi earthquake's epicenter was in the Wei River Valley, near the Haiyuan County. Historical records indicate that the earthquake had a magnitude of approximately 8, making it one of the most powerful earthquakes of pre-modern era. The seismic event affected a vast area, with consequences felt not only in Shannxi, but in neighboring provinces. One of the defining features of the 1556 earthquake was exceptionally high death toll. The estimated number of casualties is staggering, with historical records suggesting that 60% of the population in the affected areas perished. While precise figures vary, it is generally believed that around 830 lives were lost during the catastrophe. The defective force of Shannxi earthquake was not only due to its magnitude, but also to its densely populated nature of the affected region and the construction of practices over time. Many structures in the area made of earthly materials and lacked the seismic restraint features that are commonplace in modern buildings. As a result, entire villages were leveled, and numerous lives were lost as buildings collapsed under the intense shaking. The devastation caused by an earthquake extended beyond the immediate impact of tremors. The seismic activity triggered landslides, further contributing of the destruction of communities. Additionally, the quake included landslides result in blocking of rivers, creating temporary natural dams. When these dams eventually breached, catastrophic floods ensued, exacerbating the already dire situation for survivors. The aftermath of the Shannxi earthquake was marked by a humanitarian crisis of unpredicted proportions. The widespread destruction of homes and infrastructure left survivors without shelter. In the absence of modern communication systems, news of earthquakes' impact spread slowly, hindering immediate response efforts. The Ming Dynasty government faced considerable challenges in coordinating relief efforts, and the sheer scale of the disaster overwhelmed available resources. While the 1556 Shannxi earthquake had devastating immediate consequences, it also played a pivotal role in shaping subsequent approaches to earthquake preparedness and response. The lessons learned from the catastrophic event influenced advancements in construction techniques, particularly the incorporation of seismic restraint features in our buildings. Number 2. The 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami. The 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami remains etched in global memory as one of the most devastating natural disasters in recorded history. Striking on December 26, 2004, this catastrophic event had far-reaching consequences, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives and leaving lasting impacts on the affected regions. The main location of the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake was located off the west coast of northern Sumatra, Indonesia, with a magnitude of 9.1 to 9.3. The undersea megathrust earthquake ruptured the ocean floor along the boundary of the Indian and Burma tectonic plates. The immense energy released the earthquake resulted in a widespread ground shaking, but it was ensuing tsunami that would cause unpredicted destruction across the Indian Ocean region. The tsunami generated by earthquake radiated outward, impacting coastal areas across several countries. The waves, some reaching staggering heights up to 100 feet, 30 meters, struck the shores of tremendous force. The affected countries included Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, the Maldives, Somalia, Myanmar, Malaysia, and others. The timing of the disaster occurring on a Sunday morning when many coastal communities were densely populated with tourists and locals alike added to the tragic toll. The immediate aftermath of the tsunami was marked by scenes of devastation. Entire coastal communities were obliterated as the massive waves swept inland, destroying homes, infrastructure, and livelihoods. The loss of life was staggering, with estimates suggesting that between 230,000 and 280,000 people perished as a direct result of the tsunami itself. The vast majority of these casualties occurred in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, and Thailand. The humanitarian response of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami was swift, with governments, non-governmental organizations, and the international community mobilizing to provide emergency aid and assistance. The sheer scale of the disaster, however, presented significant challenges to relief efforts. The destruction of infrastructure, including roads and communication networks, hampered the timely delivery of aid to the most affected areas. Additionally, the displacement of large populations necessitated the establishment of temporary shelters and provision of essential services. In the months and years that followed, the affected countries engaged in extensive recovery and reconstruction efforts. International aid and financial assistance played a crucial role supporting these endeavors. The focus was not only on rebuilding physical infrastructure, but also on addressing the broader socio-economic impacts of the disaster. Efforts were directed towards restoring livelihoods, providing health care, and enhancing disaster preparedness to mitigate the impact for future events. The environmental consequences of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami were profound. Coastal ecosystems, including mangroves and coral reefs, suffered extensive damage from the force of the waves. The influx of the salt water into freshwater ecosystems disrupted local biodiversity, impacting both terrestrial and aquatic species. Efforts to restore and rehabilitate these ecosystems became integral to the recovery process. Number 1. The 1931 China floods. The 1931 China floods, also known as the 1931 Yangtze Huai River floods, represents one of the most devastating natural disasters in history, ranking number 1 on this list. Striking during the summer of 1931, this catastrophic event unfolded among the Yangtze and Huai rivers, affecting vast areas of China. The floods resulted from a combination of factors, including heavy rainfall, the overflowing of riverbanks, and the failure of levees. Causes and magnitude. The genesis of this 1931 floods can be traced back to the persistence and intense rainfall that began in the spring of that year. The Yangtze and Huai River basins experienced above-average precipitation, saturating the soil, causing water levels to rise. As the summer monsoon intensified, the rains became more torrential, pushing riverbanks to their limits. The levee systems, meant to contain rising waters, provide insufficient in the face of unpredicted volume of rainfall. The convergence of the Yangtze and Huai rivers created a colossal flood plan that affected vast regions of central China. The sheer scale of flooding was exacerbated by the failure of existing infrastructure, including levees and dams, unable to withstand the relentless force of the rising waters. The magnitude of the disaster was unpredicted, making the 1931 China floods one of the deadliest natural disasters in recording history. The human toll of the 1931 China floods was staggering. Estimates of the death toll vary, but it believed that 2 and 4 million people lost their lives during the disaster. The majority of these
compared to the ones that struck China.
Waterborne diseases, the widespread destruction of homes.
All through the early 1900s, great torrents swept across the Yangtze Valley,
creating a dire humanitarian crisis.
One of the most catastrophic floods of our century occurred in 1931,
displacement of population
when the Yangtze and Huanghe jumped their banks and killed 225,000 people.
Entire villages were swept away, and cities along the Yangtze and Huai rivers
in China in the 1930s, floods breached the levees.
The devastation left survivors grappling with loss of loved ones.
Floods killed 3.5 million people,
profound and lasting impact.
Greatest natural disasters of this century.
The Republic of China, grappling with internal strife and political challenges, struggled to mount an effective response to the disaster. The lack of centralized and coordinated effort hindered relief operations and contributed to the scale of the tragedy. The 1931 China floods underscored the importance of effective governments and disaster management in mitigating the impact of such catastrophic events. So there you have it, the top 5 most catastrophic disasters in the history of the world. If you like this content, consider hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel. Also click the notification bell so you are notified every time we upload. Thank you for watching.